As a subcommittee, and then as soon as we have a quorum, we will begin the regular meeting. So if we could do that. Welcome to the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. Today we will be hearing SB 848 by Senator Wolk. This measure, as you know, would replace the $11.14 billion bond currently slated for the November 2014 ballot, and it would instead put before the voters a $6.85 billion bond. Last week, this bill was heard by the Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee to discuss the issues related to water supply, and next week it will be heard by the Senate Governance and Finance Committee to discuss the issues related to the issuance of the bonds. Today, the Senate Environmental Quality Committee will solely focus on the very important issue of water quality and funding for the water quality projects. Source water cleanup, treatment, and protection projects are what ensure that Californians have clean drinking water. Currently, there are probably or approximately 1 million people in California that do not have drinkable water, and I think that's continues to be an embarrassment for all of us. This is only exacerbated by the record drought that California is currently experiencing, and as you all know, we will see more water quality problems throughout the state. The United States Environmental Protection Agency has estimated California needs to invest roughly $40 billion in drinking water infrastructure over the next 20 years. These are the problems that this committee must grapple with and must do it now. And how we will ensure clean drinking water for all Californians is something that is a priority. We should not rest, I believe, until we've accomplished that, until we find maybe not that $40 billion in the next month or two, but until we solve that drinking water problem. I think this measure that's before us today creates a good framework for that discussion. The question in my mind is, really, does this measure provide enough to improve the water quality for those Californians currently who do not have clean, drinkable water? So, Senator Wolk, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your hard work and commitment to this issue. I can't tell you how appreciative I am, and I believe all the committee members are as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, and your committee staff, your consultant, for working with me and staff over the past few weeks to develop the amendments in the analysis for 848. I accept the committee amendments as author's amendments. And again, thank you for the hard work. The current $11 billion bond on the ballot needs to change significantly. It's too expensive, too controversial, and tied to the BDCP and the tunnels. Yet we do know, as you have so well described a few moments ago, that communities and watersheds have critical water needs, particularly in the area of the jurisdiction of your committee, which is safe drinking water and water quality. The legislature needs to provide voters with a sensible alternative, an effective one, and a supportable one. I propose a $6.8 billion funding mechanism to meet the urgent water needs in California. But as you highlighted, it's not enough. In all the areas that the bond attempts to focus on, there simply isn't enough money to meet all the critical needs in our state. So this at least is a beginning. The focus of 848 will be the development of regional water supplies, diversification of water supplies, making better use of our water supplies through the integrated regional water management plans and other mechanisms. Critical drinking water needs, which is the focus of this committee, community-supported ecosystem restoration and levee enhancement in the Delta, and replenishing the Conservancy funding only for watershed and ecosystem projects around the state. They are important partners and do very important work in terms of water quality and watershed improvement. And it supports the development of groundwater and surface storage to the extent that the facilities will provide public benefits, including sediment removal from existing storage facilities and seismic repairs, which may in fact increase the capacity. So, to Chapter 4, 5, and 7. First of all, the analysis is an excellent way of approaching these areas which are within your jurisdiction, and it was very helpful, and I will follow that.
Senator Wolf, before you begin that
sure.
presentation, well, maybe we, since it looks as if we do have a quorum, so and welcome to Senator Leno, Senator Corbett, Senator Fuller, and Senator Gaines. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senators Hill?
Here.
Hill here. Gaines?
Here.
Gaines here. Corbett? Here. Corbett here. Fuller? Here. Fuller here. Hancock? Jackson? Leno? Here. Leno here. Pavley? Here. Pavley here.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And thank you all for being here this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Wolf, thank you.
I will follow the analysis. Chapters 4, 5, and 7 have items that are directly related to the jurisdiction of this committee, and I'll focus on those. Chapter 4 provides $900 million for safe drinking water and water quality projects. $400 million is allocated to the State Water Board for projects to address immediate, safe drinking water needs. This would fund infrastructure improvement projects in order to meet the drinking water standards or ensure affordable drinking water. At least 10% of the funds would be allocated for projects serving the severely disadvantaged communities. And I may just add, throughout this bond, you will see a focus on trying to get the money to the places that really, really need it. If we don't have enough money for everything, let's at least try and focus our attention on those disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged communities which have the greatest need. Up to $25 million, and along this line, up to $25 million may be used for technical assistance to those communities. It's not enough just to be able to say that a project needs to go forward and to award the money, but in fact, many of these communities are desperately in need of the technical assistance to actually make these projects happen. So up to $10 million in addition shall be used to finance development and demonstration of new technologies for water contaminant removal and treatment appropriate for use by small water systems. $100 million of this is set aside for grants and direct expenditures to finance urgent public health emergency grants, actions to ensure that the safe drinking water supplies are available to all Californians. And $400 million would go to the State Water Board's Small Communities Water State Revolving Grant Fund, that ought to have another name, for wastewater treatment projects. The board maintains a list of potentially eligible projects from around the state. So far, only half of the 320 projects on the list have identifiable means of support, and the total is about $887 million. So the need for these projects is probably double that amount, which goes back to what you said, Mr. Chair. The need far exceeds what this bond is proposing, and I recognize that in all areas. Priority is given to projects that serve disadvantaged communities and severely disadvantaged communities, and to projects that address public health hazards. $20 million is allocated to the board for grants and loans to private well and septic owners to protect drinking water sources, and the amendments that were suggested in this area were excellent. So in a state like ours, as you said earlier, I mean, it's truly unacceptable that there are 3% of Californians, or close to 1 million, that we know do not have access to good primary or secondary sources of drinking water. I would like to raise, with respect to the amendments, wanted to raise a couple concerns, and I would hope that what's characterized this process so far has been a really excellent collaboration among staffs, using the intelligence and knowledge and expertise in sort of putting together the best possible vehicle that we can for the Senate. There are a couple areas that I think just need to be highlighted. I accept the amendments as is, as they are, but when I raised the issue, there was an amendment suggested on page 13, which we will pursue in G&F with the committee staffs, that has to do with the use of public health emergency actions. The suggestion was to restrict it to disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged communities, but our original intent was any public health emergency action. So I think we just need to talk that through. Again, I accept the amendment as is, but want to highlight that. And on page 20, when it came to the stormwater capture and reuse area, and I will leave that to the Chair of Natural Resources and Water, but I just think the staffs need to work. We don't want, and I know you don't want, and nobody does, any barriers, unreasonable barrier, any kind of barrier. I mean, there are no reasonable barriers here. We don't want to create a more difficult process. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I think we can work these consultation issues out without actually creating another level of committee or that would inhibit the free flow of the money once the project is adopted. So with that, I would just like to again open it up to the committee, and I have. I don't know if I call you sponsors, but certainly strong supporters. First of all, Supervisor Natoli from the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors and still a member of the Delta Stewardship Council? Delta Protection Commission, the chair. And Jennifer Cleary, welcome from
Very good.
Clean Water Action. I was going to say Environmental Water Action. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator
Thank
Wolk.
you.
And so we'll have comments in support, and then other witnesses who would like to speak in support, and then those who have concerns or are opposed to the bill, and we'll bring them forward as well. And then we'll have some discussion and questions after that. So please begin. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Clary. I'm a water policy analyst for Clean Water Action, and I started working at Clean Water Action in January of 2003, and that's significant because my first responsibility was to track the implementation of Proposition 50. And it was so exciting because Proposition 50, Chapter 4B, had a $70 million pot that funded 5 different programs, one of which was small community water system infrastructure. And the first grant proposal they sent out was for they had $3.5 million to send out, and they got $300 million in proposals back. That's a little bit more than your average grant submission. So as we've gone through Prop 50, Prop 84, the stimulus package, we've learned more and more and more about who we're missing and what it's not taking. So I just want to say I really appreciate the legislature going through this learning process with me, because a lot of the things that we've been able to do have been done with the assistance of the legislature. So when, for instance, the stimulus funding was unable to fund any small drinking water systems because of the shovel-ready requirement, we went to Assemblymember Conway, and she sponsored a bill that created a planning grant process for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund that has actually resulted in several dozen projects planned. So we'll actually have some projects ready to go when this goes through. And so we actually have a better idea of what we need, but we still know we have a need. There are 3,000 community water systems in California, and more than 70% of them are small water systems. That means they have fewer than 3,300 people being served. And those systems tend to be run by volunteers. So when there's a problem, when something breaks, they have a harder time than most people trying to fix it. That's why the technical assistance is so important, and that's why we're really happy to see a focus on these small systems. But as we look at these small systems, we also see that systems that aren't covered by the Safe Drinking Water Act have no safety net at all, and those are state small systems and domestic wells. And state small systems serve between 5 and 14 connections, and as an example of how many there are, we're not sure how many there are, but the Tulare Lake Basin is doing a study of systems, and they've identified 195 communities of at least 15 homes that aren't served by a public water system. So just to say, there's a huge need, and we're still trying to identify it. So we think that the funds in this bond are really essential to making that point. And also, there are about up to 2 million Californians that are not served by a public water system, and up to 4 million Californians that are served by a septic system, so they're not on a wastewater system. So I would say that the this relatively small amount for the domestic well and septic system fund is urgently needed, and we don't really understand how it's going to work yet, but we appreciate your setting it to one side. And I know I'm taking too much time, so I will just say the suggestion in the analysis of funding the GAMMA program is really essential because some of the best information we have about areas with contaminated drinking water comes from the information gathered through that program. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Hill and the members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here this morning to offer a few comments in support of SB 848. I would just focus my comments and preface them by indicating that all 5 of the Delta counties have indicated their support for the matter before your committee this morning. And again, we very much appreciate the various aspects that are included in the measure, recognizing the focus of this committee's work here this morning. And I would just say, as a local elected official and member of Board of Supervisors in Sacramento County, that clean, safe drinking water is essential to not only life as we know, but certainly to, I think, the prosperity and the health and general welfare of communities up and down this state, and certainly it's something that we focus on at the local level, and again are glad to see that there's consideration in this measure for helping local communities, both in the framework of some of the comments by Senator Wolk and others here this morning, but also regionally where folks have come together. And I think that's it's no news to anyone here, but that with the focus, certainly with the drought that we're facing right now, but I think in recent years we've seen regional collaboration, certainly throughout California, and I think the measure here that we have before us will be something that will be very, very important to providing sufficient funding but technical assistance to allow local communities and regions to really, I think, take on issues that relate to clean, safe drinking water. I would note, too, that many of the communities in the 5 Delta counties rely on water that not only flows in and through the Delta for certainly agricultural and industrial purpose, but for drinking water. And many of the supplies for cities and small communities that rely upon that water in the Delta certainly require a good water quality. And I think, certainly in keeping with the Reform Act, and not only a dependable and reliable water supply, but one that obviously has good quality to it. And there are many aspects, as I said, to different funding, calling out for different funding pieces to the chapters here. But the focus on clean, safe drinking water is something that we as counties and certainly communities that we represent want to be good, willing partners working with others throughout the state, and see this measure as being one that has reasonable balance in it for not only storage and recycling conservation, but obviously with the focus on how we accomplish that and providing the technical as well as the financial resources to partner with local communities is very, very critical. And so I would just want to indicate that we're very supportive of the measure, recognizing that obviously there are a number of other committees that this has to go through. But we do recognize the importance. We believe it's important to do something now in light of the current situation, but also looking to the future of our communities and the need for good, clean drinking water in these communities. And so, again, I thank you for allowing me to be here this morning to join with Senator Wolk and others in offering comments in support of this measure.
Thank you for being here as well, and appreciate the comments. Are there others who would like to speak in support of the bill? Please come forward, and since we don't have a large group, I don't want to limit your comments, but if you could be as brief as possible, it would be wonderful. Thank you.
I promise to be brief. Pablo Garza with the Nature Conservancy, and we gave more detailed testimony last week. So I'll say we think SB 848 embodies a comprehensive approach to meeting the needs of people and the environment, and we support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, committee members. Christopher Turnell here on behalf of the Sonoma County Water Agency. We serve urban communities, dense urban communities, rural communities, and vitally important agricultural communities. Each of these sectors has really unique and quite challenging water quality improvement needs that are squarely in the public's interest to help address and to help be seen to be addressed. In the urban sector, stormwater management issues could be a huge potential source for new water supplies if we can fund cleanup and capture efforts. In the rural communities, they have severe needs for small wastewater treatment plant upgrades to help protect our rivers and streams, water quality, fishery resources, things along those lines. In the agricultural sector, impaired groundwater resources in our region are creating a very strong demand for high-quality recycled water. And anything that we can do from the state level to help leverage local efforts related to recycled water to help those communities is vitally important. SB 848, we are pleased to see, includes significant provisions to help address each of these areas, and we look forward to working more with the author and with this committee and the legislature as it goes forward. Strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Chair and
morning.
members, Chris Mearns on behalf of the California Urban Forest Council. We're here also in support of the bill. We're a nonprofit dedicated to making California's communities cleaner, healthier, and more prosperous through investments in urban forests and urban greening projects. We appreciate the bill's inclusion of funding for stormwater and urban watershed management. These types of projects provide important public health, water supply, and water quality benefits for the communities in California, and for those reasons, we're in strong support.
Very good. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Timmer. I'm the Government Affairs Director for Sierra Business Council in Truckee. We're here today to support increasing state investment in forest management and water quality protection in the source water areas of the state, especially the Sierra and the Southern Cascade. One of the many benefits Californians derive from the Sierra is clean water. The Sierra Cascade region captures water in the form of rain and snow and stores it in the upper watershed and forest for slow release over time. Sierra watersheds provide over 60% of the state's developed water supply and half the inflow to the delta. However, most of the major Sierra watersheds have high to very high fire risk due to excess hazardous fuels that can stoke wildfires, making them larger and more severe and threatening water and air quality and public health. SB 848 helps to address this problem, and we support much of what's in the bill, including Chapter 7's focus on watersheds, wetlands, and forests, and particularly distribution of funding through state conservancies. But there are a couple of things that we are concerned about that we'd like to register this morning. The first is that the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, which is a state agency created by the legislature specifically to advance natural resource goals in the Sierra, receives less than 1% of the overall funding, even though the area provides more than 60% of the water. Funding to conservancies is not pork. These are agencies under natural resources that were designed specifically to coordinate state conservation and restoration. So we fully believe that they deserve funding in this bond. Also, the Mountain Counties Overlay Area, which is defined by DWR in the Water Plan, is an area of statewide significance, yet it lacks a funding allocation under the IRWM section of this version of the bond. And finally, mercury and abandoned mine remediation is no longer listed as an eligible project type for funding. So given the important connection between forest and watershed management and a clean water supply, we request that these omissions be addressed, and specifically that funds get allocated based on an area's contribution to statewide water supply as opposed to just population. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Broad, good morning.
Mr. Chairman and members, Barry Broad on behalf of the Sacramento County Regional Sanitation District, and we're in support of the bill. A point that I think should be made is that agencies like ours that are treating human waste and so forth are now beginning to treat this to a very high level, and that makes that water available for use and recycling. For example, we're proposing just in our area to send recycled water to the southern part of Sacramento County for farmers to use for irrigation so that they don't use groundwater, so that then the groundwater is restored, and when you get into drought years, there'll be groundwater there to use. So this is a model that really can be anywhere in the state, and it's something that I think is the sort of projects that can be funded out of this water bond and should be encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broad. Good morning.
Good morning. Rebecca Krubben-Coates with the Planning and Conservation League. While we retain a support and concept position on the bill as a whole, we are very supportive of the bill's language and efforts around clean drinking water and addressing the needs of disadvantaged communities. We urge your support today, and we look forward to the dialogue moving forward.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Doug Obiji with the Natural Resources Defense Council. We're in support of the bill. We think it makes a significant investment in improving water quality, both for the environment as well as for human communities that depend on it, with a particular focus on providing safe drinking water to disadvantaged communities. Obviously, this bond can't fix all of California's water problems, but it does, through its integrated water management approach, ensure that we're thinking about both quality and supply in tandem and it sets a lot of accountability measures to make sure that these limited bond funds are matched by local dollars, with exceptions for disadvantaged communities, and that those dollars go to the highest and best projects. And we urge your support.
Thank you.
Sylvia Solis-Shaw on behalf of 3 different counties. First, on behalf of Solano County, excuse me, we appreciate the author's commitment to a statewide water management strategy. We greatly appreciate the funding that addresses the water quality projects in the Delta. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors of San Joaquin County, we are also grateful for the funding to the Delta Conservancy and for the funding for integrated regional water management plans. Specifically, we believe there's a great opportunity for conjunctive use groundwater recharge projects with excellent cost benefits to consumers. And thirdly, on behalf of the county, the Board of Supervisors of the County of Sonoma, our water agency supplies water to more than 600,000 people living in Sonoma and Marin counties. And within these, our critical wastewater systems, we have identified more than $142 million in funding needed for projects to improve water supply reliability, protect water quality, increase conservation and beneficial reuse, and protect and restore endangered species and aquatic resources. And for all these reasons, we support SB 848. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shioni Flegel. I'm here representing PolicyLink. We're a California-based national organization focused on advancing economic, social, and environmental equity. We believe that smart, targeted investment in infrastructure is a key part of accomplishing our mission, and are very pleased to see 848's specific focus on investing in disadvantaged communities. We'd like to see the bond include some additional language that puts extra priority on projects that help expand job and workforce opportunities for these communities, but are very pleased to be working with the author on making sure that this money really gets to the places that need it most. I also have been asked to put a Me Too in for the Community Water Center and the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, 2 of our partner organizations who couldn't be here today, but who work on these issues in communities throughout the San Joaquin Valley.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Eddie Marin on behalf of Sierra Club, California, just expressing our support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
David Okita, General Manager, Solano County Water Agency. We support SB 848. We get our water supply from the Delta through the North Bay Aqueduct of the State Water Project and from Cache Slough. And Cache Slough is the primary location for habitat restoration programs that will benefit the whole state. However, these projects are designed to create organic carbon for the benefit of fish, endangered fish. And that organic carbon does not mix well with drinking water treatment process. And our intake needs to be moved. We need to have a secondary intake. And our intake also is in the same vicinity as endangered fish. So moving it creates 2 public benefits. And we're pleased that the bill could provide funding for public benefits dealing with water infrastructure projects like ours. So we're in full support of the bill.
Good. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Kathy Christian representing Contra Costa and Marin counties. Thanks, Supervisor Natoli. I think he spoke very eloquently on behalf of all the Delta counties. It's noteworthy that not only Contra Costa, but many of the Delta counties have spent considerable local resources protecting their water supplies, intakes, and other programs. Climate change, different plans for how the Delta should be used all threaten that. So we appreciate the effort and the focus on protecting the water supply in the Delta that will be available, hopefully through the Conservancy in the Delta, because that's where you'll develop the most support for that. So those kinds of projects. Marin County's, a large percentage of its watershed has been mentioned, is where their local water comes from. Protection of that watershed is critical. There isn't any pipeline to the State Water Project, and so the availability of funds to protect infrastructure in other parts of the state is also greatly appreciated and supported. So we thank you and urge your support for the bill.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anyone else in support? Seeing no one, those who are opposed or have concerns with the proposal.
Mr. Chair, I've handed out.
Yes.
I hope
Yes, you
everybody
did.
has
Thank you.
a copy of the latest.
There is for everyone
a
a list of support for SB 848. Thank you, Senator.